Hello, I'm Carl Seibert. Thanks for joining me. In this video, we're going to apply metadata to some photos in Lightroom Classic. This will be metadata including the metadata that drives the new fields in Google Images. Now, this video is more or less an overview. This is by no means going to be an exhaustive look at functionality for working with metadata in Lightroom Classic. As a matter of fact, there are some other videos on this channel about that very sort of thing. Well, it's always been important to mark up your photos. Now, it's more important than ever. Google Images now prominently displays your name and your copyright information from your image's metadata. That's assuming, of course, that you put it there in the first place. So let's take a look at what Google Images is doing. Here we have the Google Images preview for an image of Greta Thunberg. And right here on the preview, right on the front, we have the creator of the image. And this is actually the IPTC creator field. We're going to see this in just a minute. And this is Melissa Renwick. We have the credit for the image. Credit's a kind of a tricky field. I'll come back to it in a minute. And we have the copyright notice for the image, the Canadian Press in this particular case. So here we have the photographer, we have the copyright owner, and quite conceivably in this copyright field, and in fact I recommend this, we could have a little bit of rudimentary contact information, like your phone number or something like that. And we have this field called credit. Credit is a tricky field. It's a little bit misunderstood. It's best explained by example. In this particular picture's case, the byline for this picture, if I was to publish it on a website, would probably look like Melissa Renwick and a slash or a dash or something, and Associated Press. Melissa Renwick would be the creator field in the metadata. It's obvious, it's the photographer, the person who created the picture. And the Associated Press would be the credit field. The credit field is typically an organization that's responsible for a picture or distributes a picture, not necessarily the owner of the copyright of the picture, and it's not even something set in stone. In this particular picture's case, originally the credit would have been the Canadian Press. AP picked it up from CP, and that's what we're seeing here. All of this information came from the photographer's original metadata. And in fact, this is all templated information. The photographer didn't have to do anything to put it here. Whenever they captioned their picture, at the beginning, they applied their template, and here we are. We don't have to do anything more. Google started supporting these fields and exposing copyright information for photographers' pictures a couple of years ago. But until recently, until this spring, this information was hidden away below a link. Now it's right here, right for everybody to see in Google Images. If you're an honest person looking for pictures in Google Images that you might want to use on your own website, now the information about who you need to get in touch with to get a license for this picture is right before your eyes. Now, there's more. Now, this is the Google Image Licensable badge. This product is still in beta, so we don't know exactly what it's going to look like. Although by the time you watch this video, it may well have been released. In this product, Google is allowing you to place a badge on your thumbnail of any picture of yours that appears in Google Images. And it looks like this. It says licensable. There are some other badges that Google has already put on thumbnails of different kinds of products. In any case, the licensable badge will be clickable, and it will allow anybody who's interested in licensing one of these pictures to click through to a page that'll put them directly in touch with the photographer and explain a little bit about the licensing. This is driven by a couple more fields in your metadata. There is a field for the licensor of an image, for your name, and there's a field for the licensor's URL, which is the URL of your website. And we can get more granular in this particular case, and either through the metadata or through specific markup on a website, we can even make a link that will take a prospective licensee directly to an e-commerce page where they can buy a license to the picture. Most photographers absolutely don't need to worry about that. And again, these are fields that are driven from templated information that's automatically applied or applied at the beginning of the process whenever you caption any picture. So the net amount of effort that you're going to have to expend is just about zero. So let's jump back to Lightroom and mark up some pictures. So here we are back in Lightroom, and we've gone out to the garden and we've collected a folder full of demo images. You might have seen this particular folder full of demo images before. I tend to use these things a few times. So the first step in marking up images is going to be applying our template to the images. Now, it's a very good idea. I should put it more strongly than that. I recommend in the most strident terms imaginable that all the information that's the same on your images come from a template. That may seem obvious because who in the world wants to type their name and address and phone number and stuff like that over and over again, tens or hundreds of thousands of times? But trust me, folks, sometimes I have seen people, for whatever reason, sit down and caption an image and just decide to type in all of that repetitive information. Beyond the wasting part of their life, it just doesn't work. Human beings are not good at typing 10 or 20 pieces of repetitive information over and over and over again. So the first step is use a template. Always use a template. And to do that, we'll just select these images and we'll go over here in the right rail in Lightroom and we'll go to the metadata section and we will select our IPTC metadata pane, which is your basic IPTC metadata, what's called the core schema metadata in IPTC terms. And we'll just select a template, a preset, and we'll do the confirmation and we'll apply the preset to all of these pictures. Now, if we go from picture to picture, I'll click off and then click on one picture and then another. We can see that all of these pictures have our Joe Photographer template applied. And if you want to make your own template, I'll put a link in the description down below, and you can download this Joe Photographer template as a starter or a template very, very similar to it, and just change the information to match your information, and you'll be good to go template-wise. So let's take a look at those fields that Google thinks are important. Mind you, it's your picture. A lot of these fields are important to you, but Google supports what Google supports. Google supports the creator field. That's you. That's your byline. It's your name. It's simple enough. Google also supports the copyright field. And here is our template Joe Photographer copyright notice. And it says copyright 2017 Joe Photographer. Okay, fine, that's cool. And Joe has also added his phone number here. I highly recommend this because this is a field that's commonly seen. Anybody who looks up who owns a photo is going to look at this field, as well as in Google Images, right on the preview screen. And if you put some rudimentary contact information in here, somebody who wants to get in touch with you to get permission to use this picture is going to be able to. It's just that simple. And you don't have to worry about specific legal language in the copyright field. We haven't had to worry about that since 1989. And basically anything that says the photo is copyrighted and it's copyrighted by you will get the job done. Okay, so now let's go look at that credit field, the tricky one. It's right here in Lightroom and it's labeled credit line. The labels of metadata fields sometimes vary from one software to another. And credit line, frankly, although it is the official IPTC label for this field at this particular time, I frankly feel is a little misleading. A number of people and a number of companies want to put their entire byline, the entire string, Joe Photographer for WidgetCo Corporation or whatever, in this field. I don't think that's best practices. I don't think two pieces of information should be conflated together in the same field, and automatic systems that publish photos tend to create their byline or credit line by concatenating the creator field, the photographer's name, with what's in the credit line field. And if you put both things in this field, you're going to end up with a very weird looking byline that's going to have your name in it twice. And as you can see in Joe Photographer's case, the credit line field is empty. And that's because most photographers, most of the time, just don't even have to worry about it. What about the fields that drive the new licensable badge? Well, here, down in the copyright stanza of our metadata dialog, we have a field that Lightroom calls copyright info URL. It's usually just copyright URL in most software. IPTC officially calls this field the web statement of rights, which is quite a mouthful. And here, in Joe's case, in this template, we have joephotographer.com, which might not actually be the best thing to do. Joe Photographer may have to fix this up a little for it to work properly. According to Google's documentation, in order for this field to work properly for your licensable badge, your URL should be in the complete, fully qualified form, including the protocol. So it should really be, let's fix this for Joe on this particular picture. It should really be https://www, if that's officially part of Joe Photographer's URL, joephotographer.com. And it could very well take us to a specific place on Joe Photographer's website. We'll say licenses in this particular case. And let's take a look at a landing page that's like that. We'll go to my own website where I have, indeed, a landing page called Licenses. Now, this is no particular bother to make. You're looking at a good, healthy 15 or 20 minutes work here. And it just says, all rights reserved, which 99.9% of the case, for me, is correct. Almost all of my pictures are all rights reserved. There are very few of mine that are released under Creative Commons, and there's an even smaller number that might be in the public domain. So it tells a prospective customer, yes, this picture is all rights reserved. You want to publish one? No problem. Contact me right here. Here's a link. Here's my phone number. For the case of those few Creative Commons pictures, I have a different landing page that's all about Creative Commons pictures. And that's all that needs to be. Now, the other two fields that are part of the licensable scheme on Google Images are hidden a little deeper in Lightroom. So we'll go back to the top here in our metadata panel, and we will change to IPTC extension. We'll be looking at fields in the appropriately named extension part of the IPTC standard. And in this particular case, we're actually looking at fields that are in the Plus standards. Plus is a standard mostly for stock photo agencies that talks about licensing of photos, and specifically even what sort of licenses go along with a photo. In any case, if we expand the licensor field under this extended section in Lightroom, we get an array of fields about the licensor of a photo. So we want to add a name because Google is going to display that. We should add some contact information because what the heck, it's certainly not going to hurt. And Joe put in his phone number and his email address right here. And here we have another URL. This is the licensor URL. And Joe, once again, really should have put, I don't want to take the J off his name. He really should have done https://www here in the beginning of this, because otherwise the link in Google might not work. But these are the fields, those two fields. Now, how do we include them in a template in Lightroom? That should be really kind of an easy question. Lightroom has a pretty cool template editor. You just go to Templates, Presets, and you go to Edit your template. And you have this editor, and you can edit things in it. And, well, let's take a look down here. Let's go down to our IPTC extension, and we're going to get to the IPTC extension rights section. And we're going to find that it tells us that there is a licensor for this picture, but guess what? It doesn't let us actually edit those fields. So if you're going to make a template that's going to work the licensor badge on Google Images in Lightroom, what you need to do is you need to go to a picture and fill out your metadata. including going down into the plus part of the IPTC extension and filling out those two licensor fields, and then from there, go to your template editor and choose Save the current settings as a new preset. In other words, you start on a picture, get the metadata to look like you want your template to look, and then go from there to make your preset. And that'll make you a preset that works. And if you try to go the other, perhaps more logical way through the template editor, it's not going to work. Okay, so don't save. Let's dismiss that. So there we go. As far as Google Images is concerned, we've done everything that we need to do or can do. Our copyright information, including our name and our contact and all that stuff, is already on the images, and we don't really need to do anything else as far as Google Images is concerned. But these are our images. We're a little more concerned about them than Google. So there's the small matter of what's in the image. We need to put captions on these images, maybe even keywords, so that we can find the images later, and anybody who uses these images down the road understands what's going on in the image. And frankly, ladies and gentlemen, at some point, I would expect Google Images to look at captions too. Right now, I don't think it's realistic for them to expect that a large enough percentage of all the images on the whole internet have captions to make it worth the bother to take a look. But that's changing, and I think that Google can draw a lot of benefit from your captions if it reads them. So that's just my prediction, is that eventually Google will be looking at this too. But in the meantime, we want to be able to find these pictures. We want to know what's in them. Our heirs and descendants want to know what's in them. Our customers want to know what's in them. So we're going to have to caption some images. So what we'll do in Lightroom is we'll simply go back and we'll select the images one at a time, and we'll write captions. Now I'll go back to the standard IPTC fields here. So in Lightroom, our caption is the description field. And as you can see in Joe's template, it's already got an inline byline right there ready to go so that we don't have to retype it. And we just caption our pictures. Now, that's a tiny, scrunchy little field. Lightroom has provided another alternative for us. We have a large caption pane. Same field, same metadata. We just now have a slightly more comfortable place where we can type our caption. So this is a picture of an orchid of some kind. So we're just going to call it an orchid, and we're going to move on. So we'll move to our next picture here. Now, the next picture in this particular folder is actually a pair. This is a raw file, and this is an exported, edited version of this very same file. So it's the same thing. So why don't we caption these together? Simple enough in Lightroom. And again, this is an overview of working with metadata in Lightroom. There's a lot of specific functionality. This isn't necessarily actually the best way to do this work or the only way to do this work by any stretch of the imagination. But with both of these photos selected, we can go ahead and we can do a caption for both of these photos at the same time. So we'll call this Rain Lilies Bloom After a Shower. Okay, fine. We'll take a quick look and make sure that I haven't messed up my typing. And again, we can do the same thing with keywords here. Keywords, by and large, are terms that people might search for that might not appear in a caption. Keywording is an expansive subject. There are a number of videos about it on this channel and many, many written words in my blog. If you're interested in keywording, I commend all of those things to your attention. So that's how we'll do it. We'll go through these photos, and as soon as I click off that and try to go anywhere, I get this confirmation dialog. It's like, yes, I do want to apply that work that I've done. And we'll move on to our next picture, which happens to be another pair, and we can do the same thing. And by the way, if we want a better view, if we want to see what we're doing a little bit better as we do our captioning, we can do this using the larger preview view in Lightroom. Now, once we're done applying metadata and captions, let's go back to grid view. We have another step to take in Lightroom. We've written these captions and all this metadata in Lightroom into Lightroom's database. We have not applied this metadata directly to these photos at this point. So if we select all the photos once again, and we go to Metadata in Lightroom's main menu, and we do Save Metadata to Files, select it, accept the confirmation dialog. Now Lightroom will save the metadata that we have just written to all of these files. Some of these files, this one for example, are embeddable file formats. These are file formats that are capable of carrying metadata directly in the photographs file. Basically, JPEGs, TIFFs, PSDs, and the DNG RAW format are embeddable files that are capable of doing this. Some of these files, we have some NEFs here, and we have some RAFs here, are camera RAW files, proprietary camera RAW file formats. Proprietary camera RAW files, such as these NEFs and RAFs and CR2s, files of that sort, for the most part, don't take embedded metadata directly in the file. These files rely on XMP sidecar files to carry their metadata. Now, in Lightroom's case, Lightroom won't embed metadata directly into the header of a file, nor will it write the sidecar file until you tell it that it's okay. And there's a good reason for that. If you stop and think about it, sometimes cameras shoot embeddable format files as original RAW files. And the whole idea of Lightroom and programs like this is that they don't touch your original RAW file unless you tell them that it's okay. You wouldn't want to edit directly on an original file, in all likelihood, but you might very well want to embed metadata into such a file. And in this particular case, these JPEG files are actually exports. The original file is sitting there right beside them. Here's the original, there's the JPEG export. So of course I want to go ahead and embed that metadata. Of course I want to write those sidecar files so that I have the metadata for all these pictures. And in Lightroom, I have to go ahead and tell it that it's okay to do this. Now there is a preference that you can set on a per catalog level that will go ahead and write your metadata into the files as you apply it, and you might want to go that way. It's perfectly fine one way or the other, as long as you're aware that you don't get metadata in your files or with your files until you tell Lightroom one way or another that that's what you want to do. And at that point, we've done it. We've applied our templates to these files. We've done all the things that will bring us benefits as far as Google is concerned and as far as our copyrights are concerned. We've captioned our files, and that's where most of the work is. Let's face it, it's going to take 30 seconds or a minute for each particular picture or set of pictures to make our captions. But it wasn't much work, and now we're done, and we can just feel better about life. So that's it, and I'll be back doing the same overview program with other pieces of software as we go through a season of Google rolling out its newest metadata-based features. So, as always, if you want to add to the discussion, if I've missed something and you want to add a clarification or ask a question, reach out in the comments down below, or in the comments on my blog, or on social media. And please, folks, as I record this, we're in the middle of an epidemic. Stay safe out there. And as always, until next time, mind your metadata.